Hello everyone, and welcome to the Rocacorba Cycling podcast. As mentioned on the previous episode, this podcast now has a new look and feel, but it's still focused on talking all things cycling and Zwift. And we're going to be offering our cycling advice and guidance to help you power up, help you improve, and help you have more fun. Anyway, Matt, Kev and Greg here, and we're recording from Girona.
Hey guys, pleasure to be here, and we've got some interesting topics to talk about today.
How you going, guys? And here we are recording the podcast at Rocacorba Cycling.
As I mentioned, we're recording this podcast from Girona, and we're on day 4 of the Power Up training camp. And you may have seen a few videos that have been released which cover the training camp, but basically we had 6 lucky Zwifters who joined us at Rocacorba Cycling just outside of Girona, which is a cycling destination headed up by Ashleigh Moolman Pasio and her family, for a training camp. And we had the opportunity, we gave 6 lucky Zwifters the opportunity to train like a pro. They were given the perfect environment for training camp, no distractions, all the best equipment, turbo trainers from Tax, power pedals from Power Tap, nutritional support from Science and Sport. There's no massage support, all the meals were cooked, so the riders literally off the bike didn't have to lift a finger. And that infrastructure then was all wrapped around a structured block of training. 4 double days with Zwift in the morning while it was a little bit nippy outside, and then a road ride every afternoon. This is the first in real life Zwift training camp, and I think it's been great so far, guys.
100%. You can just tell straight away their confidence out on the road, their confidence going down the big descents, because they're large climbs we did here. It's really good, and they had so much fun, asking questions and joking around. So we had the perfect mix.
Yeah, and for me the highlight really was seeing the training from the ergo sessions on Zwift crossing over to the road sessions in the afternoon.
Just to recap on, yes, we've done double days every day, road in the afternoon and Zwift in the morning. Just want to go through what we've done on those 4 ergo sessions, Kev?
Yeah, so we had 4 focus areas. The first session was a testing day to get a baseline of each athlete's fitness. The second day we focused on sprinting, so we did a sprint workout on Zwift, and then we did some drills out on the road with Greg doing a big lead out with everyone there. On the third day we focused on time trialling, again indoors on Zwift first, and then followed that up with a road session, and today was another climbing session.
I think my favourite day, and again it's easy to say because obviously we didn't do the erg sessions, but watching and hearing the comments from the riders was probably the climbing day, the one we done today, and the session was 3 11-minute efforts, all at varying cadences. So we started at 85 revs a minute down to 75 revs a minute, just to try and simulate climbing, still producing a lot of power and a lot of crank torque, as we always talk about. And then in the afternoon then out on the road, and we had comments from riders saying, I can just sense it's the same sensations in the afternoon on the road as this morning on Zwift.
Yeah, that really sums up the camp, and also the idea behind the camp, to show anyone, all of our listeners out there, that what you experience in the real world we can recreate on Zwift, and what you gain on Zwift is going to cross over to the real world.
An interesting thing, just to carry on from that, so Ashleigh Moolman joined us today, and her session this morning was what we call sweet spot, or sustainable aerobic power. And then she took off and led us out of town on the road ride, and we heard the calls from behind, slow down, and she just goes, this is unbelievable. I've just been on the erg for an hour and a half. It feels so easy out here. So that instant translation of an ergo workout onto the road, she just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, obviously you've been doing the erg sessions every day with the riders, Greg, and you kind of commented this is as hard as any training camp you've done.
You probably saw I gave it pretty much everything I had in a few of those sessions, and absolutely. And then the turnarounds are not huge, it's not like you're sitting around for 4 or 5 hours to recover. It's 2.5 hours and we're away again, and the rides aren't small. They're 75 Ks with specificity, time trialling, climbing or sprinting.
Yeah, and for me, what we've done with the camp is I've run 4 training camps around the world this year with World Tour guys, and we were doing double session days, ergo first, road in the afternoon. And these Zwifters have done the exact same training as the World Tour guys, and that shows that everyone is going to benefit from the same style of training.
Yeah, it's good. And we just mentioned a minute ago on day 1 we've done the testing. I think we're going to use that testing session for this podcast. So I guess you designed it, Kev?
Yeah, well, I've designed the session, but the ideas have been around for a long time. So what we've done here, we're moving away from the old 20-minute FTP test, and what we're trying to do now with this session that we did with the athletes here, we're looking at 2 different efforts to get the same results. That way one validates the other. So we started out with a warm-up, and then we did what we call a ramp test. A ramp test has been around for a long time, but this ramp test, every minute we're going up by 25 watts, and you go until exhaustion. And from that ramp, you then find your peak 1 minute power. From that peak 1 minute power, you then look at 72% to 77%, and there's your range of your maximal aerobic power. And this is where your threshold should be within that range. So there's our range. So after a cool down and another warm up in the same session, we then do an 8-minute full gas time trial. And from the average power from the 8 minutes, we then look at about 90% of that 8-minute power. And that 90% of the 8-minute power should fall within the 72 to 77% of your peak 1 minute power. And that way, one is validating the other. So you can play around the numbers a little bit, but you're not going to base your threshold off your ramp test. That's just there to validate your 8-minute effort. So do both of them. Look at your 8-minute power, get the 90% of that average power, and then see where it falls into that range of your peak 1 minute power.
I think the key word I'm picking up on there is range. I know you've got these 2 different testing outputs that give you a number. So using those alongside your normal 20-minute, and they should all be, as we're saying, they should validate each other, and should all be pretty similar. And how hard is it mentally to do 20 minutes? So to G yourself up for that, it's savage. Whereas I think the ramp and the 8 is slightly easier, more manageable.
Yeah, and then once you've got your threshold set from that, the ramp test is the kind of effort you can do in your training. You can do it every fortnight, every 6 weeks, and it's a good way to track your progression. You don't have to do the 8-minute test after it, just do the ramp test, and as your fitness improves, you should be going a bit further into the ramp test, into the next level, and that way you know that you actually are making some gains.
No, it's a good test. It's actually a good training program. I used to often include the ramp test. You'd see how far you get up through the ramp test. It's a really good session.
And for more insight into the Zwift Power Up Training Camp, check out the videos that Zwift are sharing on social media. But now we're going to talk about goal setting. The new year is well and truly underway, and some goals may or not have been set, but now is often the time for cyclists to look at their cycling goals for the year, or for the season ahead. So the first thing you've got to do is come up with a goal. Now, writing it down, giving yourself something challenging yet meaningful, and of course make sure it's quite specific, and breaking a goal down. Giving yourself milestones can really help with both motivation and tracking progress.
Yeah, and I'd probably add to that by saying to reflect on the season just gone. Did you achieve your goals in the previous season? If you did, then obviously you're then going to look to set yourself some harder or more high goals. Yeah, so look at what you've done in the past, and then, as you said there, Matt, then plan for the season coming up.
The key is writing down that goal, because then you've actually put it in your brain, you've written it down somewhere, and you're not going to forget it. This is what you actually want to achieve, and you have to have that intrinsic value. You have to actually want it yourself. You can say you want to be the president of the United States.
I wouldn't want to be that person,
right? But you know what I mean. If you really want it, then you can make progressions towards that final goal too. So it's not about just setting one goal that, okay, this is where I want to be. There's actually a very large progression, each step, each ramp to that final goal.
Yeah, I think a lot of riders kind of struggle to come up with a goal. They just kind of want to just be better, and without really defining what better is. And you go into the new year and they're kind of a little bit lost, kind of rabbit in the headlights. So what am I working towards? And it's just some ideas,
Yeah, and these don't have to be racing goals either. So for people that are just riding their bike to keep fitness, and set yourself a goal of setting a new 1 minute power in the first part of the season, then look at the other part of the power duration curve later in the season. So these don't have to be racing goals. You might want to increase your mileage for the year. You might have done 5,000 kilometres last year, and let's look at how you're going to do 6,000 the next year. So we're not looking at everyone being involved in high-level racing. This is for anyone out there, whether you're riding indoors or outdoors, but set yourself a realistic goal and work towards it.
What was yours, Kev? You used to always say if you could dip under 100 kilograms in weight, you'd feed yourself a big feed of fish and chips. Is that right?
It's getting to that point, yeah.
Yeah. And Strava as well. Strava's a great way to measure your performance, and that's kind of real world performances. So out on the road, feeling better, going faster, setting new PBs. They're good goals. If you're struggling for ideas, hopefully there's something that's kind of giving you a bit of motivation there.
Yeah, so when we look at a new season, so say for example, obviously 1st of January, everyone has some very lofty goals and ideas, and if it's too many changes, it's not going to be sustainable. So they say if you can make one change in your life or lifestyle, it's going to be sustainable for the season coming up. So it might be that you want to include a gym session each week, or it might be that you want to increase your mileage by 50 kilometres each week. So just look at making one change to what you've done in the previous year, and that way you can sustain it throughout the year. January 1, we're all full of beans and enthusiasm, and we sort of go in there pretty gun-ho, but come March, April, that's when people start to get a bit tired.
Yeah, and again, it all comes down to being realistic. If you want to try and target a certain race, but you've got huge work commitments and family and all that may not be quite realistic. We'd all love to ride the Tour de France, but we can't all do it. So being realistic, absolutely key.
And like you touched on before, Matt, it's like upon reflection too. So were you happy with last season? What did you find you were missing, or what part were you not quite happy about? How are we going to take the steps to rectify that? And that's another great motivation. That's like, why did it go wrong? Okay, I can see what's happened. This is how I'm going to change it, and you take the micro goals to get to the final goal.
Yeah, and over Christmas, I think different people have got different views on how to approach their cycling over Christmas. Some people view it as an opportunity to do more and train hard. Other people, it's kind of family time, and the bike goes away, and you don't have an option to ride the bike. And of course, this is where Zwift can help. Being able to pop downstairs into the garage or in your Zwift den and just pop, do a quick half an hour session, a real high intensity workout. And what do you used to do, Greg? Christmas time, was that training or hard training or?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was my job. So I was full gas Christmas time, New Year, because if we go into the goals and whatnot for pro teams, like the first race is Tour Down Under, it's World Tour. And you have to be flying, so there's no real as much as you want to let your hair down or put the bike away. But yeah, you can totally understand it. It's time to spend family time, kick back, relax, throw a couple of shrimps on the barbie, mate. And but yeah, no, for me it was, again, I was down under, obviously, New Zealand or Australia, so the weather was perfect. I had no excuses. There was racing, there's Bay Crits on, there's local club races on, so it was business as usual around Christmas time, New Year's for me.
And the big one I think a lot of people will be thinking about and be worried about is weight over Christmas. It's an obvious time where people tend to overindulge a little bit, and I always say to guys, Christmas is a very special period. It's only a week out of 52 weeks a year. Yeah. Kind of, enjoy it, man, and just and worry about it in the new year.
100%.
Yeah, well, look, in terms of weight, obviously, again, January 1, new year, new me, I'm going to lose some weight. We all do it. Everyone does it. But, again, talking about being able to sustain something, and for me, I think the key advice is change one thing in your lifestyle. You could ride the same amount of kilometres each week, the same amount of hours, and you could stop drinking soft drink. And it's going to be a reduction in calories. Or you could stop eating biscuits. Just make one change. So don't go in there making too many changes to your diet. Just make one change to your diet, train as you were, and you're going to see a difference that way.
I'm not sure how I'd struggle cutting out biscuits. Bit of a weak spot, dunking biscuits and coffee, to be honest.
Well, we're just happy that you're talking about coffee nowadays and not alcohol.
And I guess to add to this conversation too, in terms of training and weight loss, it is in some ways a touchy area. Like, we're all keen to do it. There's so many devices out there now to help you track things. So everyone likes to look at their data over the 12-month period, the year. If you are into tracking your data, a good one is something like MyFitnessPal. A good way to just scan the foods you eat, look at the calories you're consuming, but don't get too intense with it. Don't let it rule your life. The best way to do it is to just track your calorie intake over a period of a week. That way you get some averages there, and you can see how much you're exercising, how many kilojoules you're burning in exercise, and try and work out where you can make some changes from there.
Yeah, and on the topic of not changing too much in one go, if you are new year, new me, you're going to start a new training plan, you want to lose all this weight, trying to do both those things at the same time is tricky. You start increasing your training load whilst trying to decrease your calorie intake. It's going to really hit you. So I always say, worry about the training first. Get dialed into your training, let your body adapt to this new training load, and then worry about your nutrition and your diet.
I used to find that all the time was when I'd start back training after my off season. I couldn't drop the weight. I'd be doing 3-4 hour rides, 3,000 calories, and the weight would not start to come off for about a month. But the reason behind that is I was so hungry from the training that I'd go home and eat more. But I was like, I know eventually I'll adapt to this training. It won't be as hard as what it was, and I can go back to my normal eating habits, and then the weight starts to shift. So it's just an experience thing, and just to know that it will move eventually. Don't panic. Don't change 1,000 things at one time, and then if you are increasing your load, eventually the weight will shift.
Do you think there's much truth in, after a bike ride, drinking a load of sparkling water and going to bed? Does that kind of sparkling water give you that false sense of being full, trick in the mind, or is that an old wives' tale?
Well, I know what the guys do you know what the guys used to do? They'd come home, sparkling water, 3 still knocks, straight to bed. So they wouldn't eat.
Can't be good for you.
That cannot be good for you.
Right, well, that's our chat about the camp and setting goals. Moving on, it's cycling terminology explained. Have you got something for me, Greg?
Righto, Matt. What does chopping off to the death mean? You've got 30 seconds starting from now.
Okay, that's kind of in chain gang formation, where you're going kind of toe to toe, and you basically just keep going through, you don't miss a turn until you can't go through anymore. It's kind of, egos can often come out. It's kind of, you're going toe to toe. It's man against man or woman against woman, and it's just all out effort. And you just keep going until your legs blow up, basically, and you can't go anymore. And that is chop off to the death.
Well done, good timing.
Yeah, not the type of thing you probably want to do too often, but great. Just jumping on your local chain gang or your local bunch ride and just unstructured structure. It's just a big hit out. Yeah. Big fan of that.
And ironically, you kind of find yourself doing that on Zwift sometimes, don't you? If you all of a sudden find yourself riding next to someone and they pass you, then you pass them. Next thing you're doing, chop off to the death on Zwift.
You've got a group, and you just always see a group come by. You're like, I don't know where they're going, but I'll follow.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, quick fire question. So the question is, mudguards, yes or no?
No.
I only ride on Zwift, so no.
And I'm going to say yes, because in the UK,
where do you live?
In the UK, and it's
definitely something to do with
where
global location. Yeah,
for sure. I'm a bit of a hypocrite here because I haven't actually got mudguards on my bike, but I like when other people have them on their bike. Great idea. Obviously, if you live in where we are now in Girona, or where it's good weather, why would you bother?
Yeah, no, it's true. But then they are great when you're in Holland in a wet peloton. It saves, not only does it save your backside from getting drenched, it saves the person on your wheel having a mouthful of tyre spray. So yeah, of course they make sense, but coming from down under, it's just all round weather, isn't it?
And don't do it.
And if it's raining,
culture, no.
The weather's so good. If it's raining, have a day off.
Have a day off, yeah.
Jump on Zwift.
Another problem with mudguards, if you've got a group and there's 10 guys in the group, 9 have got mudguards and 1 hasn't. Well, that one guy gets all the benefit from the other riders, but he's dishing out all the spray everywhere. It's kind of, you've got to all buy into it, or don't, not at all. I think.
I never thought about that. I've also heard, this is going off topic, but in Norway, you have to ride I think it's something like double tubes. If you're going to join, because they put so much salt and stuff on the roads, and if you've only got one, you'll puncture. So if you haven't double tubed, you're not coming on the group ride, because obviously you don't want to stop on the side of the road because it's negative 8,000 degrees. Yeah. And so, you're not allowed to come. No, sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Double tube it.
Yeah. It's when you do have a puncture and you look at some riders' tyres and they've got ball patches all over them. It's like poor etiquette.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. The Q&A section. So we got, how many questions we got here? I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Question 1, and again, all these questions are from riders on the Zwift camp, actually, apart from the last one. But the first question, Delia Thorley, one of the warriors, the Scottish warrior from the Zwift camp, and Delia's question goes: when looking to build both power and endurance, what should be the first priority and why?
A very loaded question, isn't it? That's there's so many different opportunities in any way you want to structure it. Obviously got a very, very restricted time limit. So, answering that question alone, I would say, righto, let's just do a simple basic plan of the hours that you do have, and maybe we do 1 or 2 sessions a week with the power session, but we also in that week include our endurance, almost together.
Yeah. Yes, and my take on that would be, if you have low availability to train, if you're 8 to 12 hours, I would be looking at power over endurance first. Looking at starting short with the efforts. You might be looking at your 1 minute power. You might be doing 30-second efforts, building up to 1 minute, extending the duration of the effort. So I would look at that in a reverse way and go power first, and then with that the endurance will come.
I quite similar. I think endurance is kind of factored in everywhere. You're always kind of training your endurance, and for most riders, don't have the luxury of being able to go out and create the perfect training plan because of time restrictions. You have to flex around your life, and you're always training your endurance alongside other attributes. You can't, if you've got 8 hours a week, you can't do just endurance, just ride steady in those 8 hours. You've really got to maximise those opportunities, maximise those hours. Just thinking of a way to, if you are tight on time, how to train that endurance. Sweet spot. I'm a massive advocate of sweet spot. A real smart way to build that aerobic base, and just make you feel all round fit. And then kind of working on your more explosive power after that.
2 other variances that we could mention here also is we want to increase our power over what time? 10 seconds, 6 seconds, an hour. So again, it's an open-ended question.
I think of power. I think of power more in terms of your explosive power across short duration, right? So I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. That capacity of your VO2 max, the kind of the zones 5 and 6. That's what I think of when you talk about power. The longer stuff is just general riding, fitness.
So what do you call your sprints then, your 10 second, 12 second? What do you call that?
Sprints.
Not power.
Sorry, I call them just sprints.
Oh, yeah. Because it is a different energy system. Okay, like we touched on, you are always training your endurance system, which is your aerobic system. It just becomes the component that gets trained the most. So, the short ones is like we spoke about, I think one of our podcasts not long ago, the ATP, PCR, PRC.
Yeah. Even down to 30 seconds, I'd call that. 30 seconds up to 6 minutes or so. That to me is explosive power. That's where he's producing big numbers, capacity, and below 30 seconds, you're pretty much just full gas, aren't you?
Yeah.
But you can't really. You're not going to measure that. Anything else to add there?
No, I think we covered that one.
There we go. Okie doke. Next question is from Fleur on the Zwift camp, and Fleur's question is: which training plan would you recommend for L'Étape du Tour, and can you combine these workouts with outdoor riding?
Great question, Fleur. Ironically, or coincidentally, coincidentally, there is a 16-week plan coming out on Zwift for L'Étape that's going to be released in March at some point. And the good thing behind this plan is that it's going to incorporate a mix of structured workouts, free rides, group rides, so it's very sociable as well. Obviously, it's going to cover the demands of the event itself. L'Etape is got some long climbs. I think it's made up of 2 very long climbs for this occasion. But what the process is and the outcome is it's going to be a large community training together over a 16-week period with the goal of L'Etape.
Yeah, brilliant. And then for those longer rides especially, obviously Zwift has now got this new feature, Meetup. So if you're doing it with some friends, you can use that Meetup function, and you can do these longer, steady endurance rides alongside your friend indoors on Zwift. And they're probably the sessions, the longer, steadier rides, the less specific stuff, are the sessions that I would recommend. If you do want to do some work outdoors, do those outdoors. Perhaps the longer, steadier ones, and the shorter, sharper, specific stuff, do in that controlled environment on Zwift.
But either way, the tap itself is long climbing, and this is where we're going to use Zwift. We have plenty of long climbs on Zwift, and so it doesn't matter whereabouts in the world you live, you're going to have to train on a climb of an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've done this morning on Zwift, we've been encouraging riders to do climbing workouts. Put a block under your front wheel, elevate that front wheel, open your hip flexors, engage your hamstrings and your glutes. And what was it, playing the piano, Kev, was the tip?
Yeah, so going back to Greg's day of racing now, Bernard Hinault,
1940.
famous cyclist, once said, when climbing, play the piano. And by that he means just dangle the fingers over the edge of the handlebars, just not gripping the bars tight, just nice and relaxed. And that's then going to relax your shoulders. Sit on the back of the seat and drive the pedals from the back of the seat.
There you go. There's some climbing advice for those long climbs and how to train on Zwift. Next question was sent in from Josh Goodyear via Twitter, and Josh's question goes, I'm going into city racing next year. How would you break up winter training? What is the best way to start and finish? I have about 8 hours a week to train. So again, that was the important bit here. If it's city racing, criterium racing, I'm interpreting that to be kind of hour-long circuit races. It's all about being fast and powerful. So also you need an element of base and general fitness, but it's all about your ability to ride often well above threshold, making multiple surges and accelerations out of bends and stuff, following attacks. It is really all about your speed. So make sure there's plenty of capacity and VO2 work, hitting zone 5, 6. And sprinting's obviously going to be key as well. Yeah,
and through the winter part of the program, obviously we want to be progressing in a controlled manner. So I'd be recommending definitely the high intensity stuff. Like in winter, I have any rider now stay in touch with high intensity work. It can just be simple 6-second sprints, because you can do those all day and recover from those very quickly. So even during a winter plan, 6-second sprints, some low intensity endurance riding, either indoors or outdoors, because that way you're still touching on using your fast twitch fibres, and they do get the training effect that way as well. Yeah, and just I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I know in Zwift there is I think it's a Crit Crusher training plan for criteriums specifically. So maybe you can check that out, give that a go as well. There's also the winter plan on there. I've had a look at that before, and it's quite a good plan. So in Josh's case, it's a good way to, as we just said then, maintain some fitness through some high intensity work, not too much, but to get you through winter, and then when the build phase comes before the racing, you're ready to go and you've got some good fitness behind you. And our final question actually came from the breakfast table this morning. One of the riders was asking about this golden window for recovery. What is it? Is it 20 minutes? Is it an hour? And we all kind of had a view, but Greg took it in his own hands to ask some experts.
So, the question basically is, we know we need carbohydrate directly after our training, and from any variation from 20 minutes to an hour. And then the question went, why? Why is it that? So, I sent out some emails to some friends, and that asked you can drop Professor Jim Cotter, who was my professor this year, and Professor Nancy Rayner. And the great thing about it was they came back with some really in-depth answers for me, but they're all exactly the same. So the goal is, the key to this is actually, it all depends on what you're actually trying to achieve, in particular quick recovery versus particular adaptations. So in terms of recovery, the primary glucose transporter responsible for uptake to the muscles is faster when you contract your muscles. So this means you have the possibility of a greater rate of glucose and glycogen resynthesis. However, you may want to delay, for certain purposes, delay the intake so that you actually get an adaptation of the other way, then you become more sensitive to less glucose. So it all depends on what you're actually trying to achieve. And then the other really interesting thing they both said, on the other side of the coin, growth hormone release is hugely exaggerated when you withhold carbohydrates and exercise. And we all know growth hormone is like the massive building block of the human body, really. So the reason is, to eat within that window is you are more susceptible, your insulin sensitivity is greater, so you'll get more carbohydrate, you'll absorb more carbohydrate. Say you took a glass of carbs, 200 grams, you would absorb 190 of them directly in that window. If you took it 8 hours, 200 grams, you might only absorb 100 grams of it. So that's the actual reasoning behind the window.
Right, there we go. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Sounds good, mate. Next time.
Great work. Thanks, guys.